Happy New Year, ladies and gentlemen. And everyone loves New Year's resolution, but they never seem to really finish it. I never finish mine, so I thought this year be a good idea to make one that's doable and fun. Most of the time, resolutions aren't that fun. Lose weight, go to the gym, you stop after February, and it's already March, so I'm assuming everyone has quit theirs. But not me. I'm doing one it's actually a good idea. So what I'm going to do is watch every Best Picture winner from the Academy Awards in chronological order starting at 1970. So that's 53-ish movies in 52 weeks. So basically a movie per week. And kind of the even fun part of this is I want to do a video for every decade. Just kind of see how the industry changes over time and whether the Oscars actually notice that and reward that, or if they kind of try to stick to the old ways. We'll see if any of this is actually worth it in later videos. But to start off, we're starting with one of the best decades ever in Hollywood, a time when fashion peaked and the American dream died. Talking about the 1970s. That's pretty good. Okay, so let's actually get into the entree of this video. The prevalent themes I saw in the Oscar winners sort of reflected what was going on in the 70s, but only slightly. The big, loud 70s movies, like Dog Day Afternoon, the Academy did not think that was the best picture of that year. Other big productions throughout the decade, like Fiddler on the Roof, or I don't know, Barry Lyndon is a big production, but the Academy did reward some of the smaller ones as well. It was kind of a 50-50 split on whether they really chose a good one or not. And some of the years were not strong. Some years were too strong. So I think that just happens every decade. So the prevalent themes I saw in the Oscar winners was the gritty realism and the controversial themes, some more than all, I would say. Racism is a big thing in these movies in the 70s. Even the studio movies, like there's a lot of racial slurs that they just kind of throw around to kind of paint the characters as more rugged, less refined, especially some of the main characters that play cops or people in power. They use racial slurs like crazy. So that was pretty consistent. And it's the 70s. The civil rights movement just happened. So they're kind of saying maybe what bad people thought at that time. I don't know. I'm just saying I noticed it. Racism is a big deal in most of these movies. And not in like a weird, preachy, thematic way. Like it's like just part of the world. Like the stories are focusing on one thing, and then, oh, by the way, these characters are racist. It's really weird, but it's like kind of that realism that it's going for, authenticity. Like these characters are bad people, they're also racist. It's like, okay, sure. Like I said earlier, these stories are not happy endings. They mostly end in tragedy. And the Best Pictures, very similar. A lot of tragedies, except for one. And then flawed, broken protagonist, kind of going back to what I said about the racism. It's that authenticity, rugged, gritty, controversial themes. The characters that are going to exist in that story are not going to be clean, and they're not going to be happy. Most of these movies are very character-driven, character-focused. So we see them at all times in every way that they are bad, and we follow them. In spite of that, to kind of see them try to be better, and then they don't, because it's a tragedy, because it's the 70s. All of this is really to kind of just challenge the clean image America has had for previous decades. That American dream, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and you'll make it big. These movies are the antithesis of that. These characters are very ambitious in a very greedy capitalist way. They are willing to sometimes kill people to get what they want. And America rewards that, but it doesn't lead you where you want to be in the end. So let's actually get into these movies. The first winner in 1971, Patton, is surprisingly timely. It's a studio movie. It's kind of before the trends really set in, but by itself, it's very interesting in a modern perspective. It's a biopic about a great military leader who keeps getting in his way because times are changing. He's born in the wrong era. It's kind of saying the greats in history are often in the wrong time period, being judged for their mistakes so harshly and justly because the world changes, and some great minds that have built what they believe is the right path are kind of set in old ways. So by the time they're at the point where they can do greatness, the world has left them behind. And this movie really, really sets that up in a very interesting way. These characters are judged very correctly for when they live, because they're so set on when they should have lived that they can't actually achieve the greatness that they crave. And it's that crave. It's not like they deserve it or anything, or that it will do any other people good. It's more of a selfish greatness that because they're selfish, because it's the ego that is driving them, they will fail. It's a great performance by George C. Scott for Patton. He won. Apparently it's not accurate, but for what this movie is trying to do, great job. Really good performance. Great cinematography and blocking. There are a lot of shots where Patton is in this palace because he's conquered like Italy, Africa. He's in these great historical locations and he doesn't fit in there. He wants to be a part of this great history. And the way he's filmed as this tiny little speck on these ancient battlefields, or whenever he's in the palace, his military uniform doesn't fit the marble columns and floors that other military generals used to walk in. Or when he's giving speeches, there are marble busts of Roman emperors surrounding him and dwarfing him in the frame. It's very well shot. Because it is the studio system, it's very clean, it's very calculated, and in this movie especially, it works. It's a lengthy biopic, and the first scene is easily the best. But if you're a history nerd, I'm sure you'll really like it, and if you're a biopic person, I think this one is hopefully more honest than most. So after Patton, the best pick winner from the studio system is The French Connection in 1971. This is the one. It's French. I don't know if that's actually why they involved French spies or French drug dealers in this movie, but I'm going to say it is. The French Connection is very much inspired by the French New Wave in that it's going to break every rule it can, and the characters are so hateable, but that's the point. But it's kind of fun. It really nails the gritty realism that the 1970s became, and it has awesome editing and really fun action. Really cool choreography between the actors in very long takes with the camera work and shifting locations. The main characters are really gross, rule-breaking cops that prey on black drug addicts for easy quota arrests. They take advantage of the lazy system that exists in their industry. But then they have this opportunity to make it big. So, of course, they're going to go for it. And they're kind of out of their depth, and they're corrupt. So they're going to break all the rules to the point where, is it really worth what they're trying to do? It's a really good setup, only for like a really bad ending. The ending sucks. I don't know if they lost money or if they just didn't have a snappier way to kind of slap you in the face. The ending is a slap you in the face kind of ending. I would argue in a lazy way, but maybe they didn't have the resources to, or the time to really kind of flesh it out to get you to commit to it. It's just kind of a slideshow of what happens to everybody to kind of tie everything up in a little bow. And it really pissed me off because the rest of the movie is really good. So these movies are really fun, but for this next one, I'm gonna have to swap my drink because we're talking about The Godfather. So with me, to celebrate me talking about The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2, is Marlon Brando's favorite drink that is now called The Godfather. So of course I have to have this. I had it before I watched the movies. So, salute. Forgot how to say cheers in Italian.
You can tell them that you've never seen The Godfather and that you'd love them to explain it to you.
Ooh, are you guys watching The Godfather?
The Godfather.
I've never seen it.
Oh my God, you've never seen The Godfather? This movie is a rich blend of Coppola's aesthetic genius and a triumph to Robert Evans and the architecture of the 70s studio system.
Can you start the movie over and just talk through the whole thing?
So The Godfather, 1972 Best Picture winner. It won basically every award. I wish I could make everyone watch this movie. It's a really good movie. Very long, but there's so many classic scenes throughout that it kind of revives you to be like, oh, I'm falling asleep. No, I'm back. The horse head. Oh, I'm back. The Killing of the Five Families. Oh my gosh, he's in Italy now. Really good stuff. My favorite scene is definitely the restaurant shootout where he kills the Turkish guy and he kills the cop. That scene is so good with the train screeching and he can't find the gun in the toilet. It's really that scene is like, oh, it's the 70s. Very subjective, very gritty, very gross, but also it's a big movie. It's a big production. So it has big triumphant moments, it has big set pieces, really fun stuff. Francis Ford Coppola is just unbeatable in these movies, in the first two. So in terms of breaking rules, though, it still breaks rules. It steps away from studio lighting. Like, it does the light over the head so that everyone's faces look like skeletons. All the exterior shots are very naturalistic, especially when they're in the Italian countryside. Very beautiful. When they're inside and they're talking strictly business is when they kind of become less human and more these corrupt monsters in suits. And the lighting does most of the job with that. Really cool stuff. Also really good blocking. The 70s, very good with blocking, even in the smaller movies. Great use of mirrors and stuff. Anyways, it is a classic to this day for a reason. This movie is perfect. For 1973, The Sting, we're going back to this drink, the White Russian. But really, I don't want to talk about this movie at all because it's the studio oddball out of all these Best Pick winners. It has some racial struggles at the beginning, only for the big finale to be only white people. I think they have the black family at the very beginning to kind of show the class divide that it's trying to set up in this story world. That is just abandoned by the end. It's kind of the reason why the character gets involved, and it's nothing more. So that's kind of unfortunate. The song is awful. The song is really bad. I think it won the Oscar for score that year. That's ridiculous. The editing is even worse. This movie won 7 Oscars that year. It swept. I don't know why. I don't like anything in this movie, except for Robert Redford. Gives a very good performance that is very clearly Brad Pitt's blueprint for his entire career. Everything Robert Redford does in this movie, Brad Pitt does in 10 movies. So don't watch The Sting, watch Ocean's 11. And then 2 years later, in 1974, The Godfather Part 2 comes out. It's longer, I think. It's definitely longer. twice as many characters, 2 different time periods. We see the rise of the Corleone family at the same time as the downfall of the Corleone family. That, I am assuming, was a new thing in the 70s. I'm sure people had never seen a movie of that scale do that kind of thing before, mostly because it's a sequel. Like, how many sequels like win Oscar awards? Not a lot. So this movie completely swept, and it was a big year of movies too, and no one else stood a chance. Like, Chinatown would have been the biggest movie of all time if this movie didn't come out and make everyone forget Chinatown existed. It adds more depth to characters from the first one that I thought were missing in the first one. The older heads in the families, it's like, who are these guys? We're not supposed to trust them, or are we supposed to trust them, Matt? And then part 2, kind of, you see their backstory and their relationship with Don Vito. So it really fleshes those guys out to the point where part 1 is even better. So that's kind of cool. One thing I do really want to point out with this movie in particular is how Francis Ford Coppola like frames Al Pacino. Al Pacino is a small actor, so it kind of helps. But he definitely leaned into it in this one. In Godfather Part 1, I think he tries to hide how small Al Pacino is in some scenes, especially when he rises to power. But in this movie in particular, he is doubling down on how tiny this man is. All the power dynamics, he is never in charge. So he's always the smallest person in the frame. He's always the shortest person when it's like a two-on-two person talking. He is always the shortest. And whenever there's a bunch of people, like a crowd shot, or like he's talking to people sitting down, he is always the smallest. He is never fully in charge. He knows what's going on, and he's trying to plan it out so that he wins, but he's still never really in charge of his enemies. They all look down on him, and so does the film. The film is like, this guy is nowhere as good or as close to Don Vito. And then we cut to De Niro absolutely acting his ass off with like the far better sequences. I would much rather have a De Niro Don Vito movie than a sad Pacino in Cuba movie. I'm actually not the biggest fan of Godfather Part 2. I think Godfather 1 is way better, no question. Think of any set piece from the Godfather trilogy besides Michael kissing Fredo at New Year's. All the set pieces are in Godfather 1. Godfather is better, but these two movies together, Francis Ford Coppola is one of the all-time greats because of these things. 1975's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is definitely one of the better Oscar Best Pictures out there. It does so many things that I kind of want to get into, don't really have time, so I'm just going to mention 2. So the inclusion of Chief being a mute giant in the background is the perfect summary of Native Americans in Hollywood, in the Hollywood Western genre. And for Chief to actually be the smartest character in the end and find the courage to break free of their prison and run back into the open fields is one of the more powerful reinventions of film iconography that I've ever seen. Because old Westerns painted the indigenous people in the West as just kind of part of the landscape. They are silent, violent things out there that once you leave the safety of civilization, they'll kill you. That's how Westerns painted Native Americans. So this movie, Chief kind of starts out as that. This like kind of looming, silent threat in the background. And the more Jack talks to him, the more Jack inspires him, which I know the white man is inspiring him, but Chief reveals to us, to the audience, that he is none of those things. He's smart. If only he had the inner strength to break free, and then he finally gets it. So it's like a reclaiming of that iconography. He takes it for himself. No one can lock him up anymore at the end of that movie. Very powerful, very cool, regarding Littlefeather's speech at Marlon Brando's award. I just wanted to make that connection. Also, kind of pitting the rebellious, rage-filled white men against intelligent women and working-class black men is a very powerful social conflict that, at surface level, sides with Nicholson's character, because he's our main guy and he wants to break free, but he's abusing the system, and there are punishments for that. The system will break you. That's like the whole point of this movie. The system is flawed. The system is here, not in your favor. So that kind of rebel, it's like a new version of the rebel. It's not about like the white man fighting social change, because his friends are kind of these weak white guys, and his opponents are not white guys. So it's at surface level, you could read this movie in a bad way, but I would argue it's how certain people react to the system, join or die, and the rebel spirit of humankind. Like, order is meant to be broken. So it's more like the universal themes set in the 70s, where a very lazy white guy wants to break the system because that's what lazy guys do. They find out how to break the system. And just kind of this new reality of what the system actually is and how it opens opportunities for some people, and it's really just there to kind of keep people in place and lock them up. So I think this movie is very powerful, definitely worth the watch. It is a hard watch, though. And then we get to the fun one, Rocky, 1976. It is the bicentennial. It is a movie about the bicentennial. Rest in peace, Carl Weathers. Literally a legend. That guy's one of the greatest actors of all time. I'm not talking about like range. I'm talking about presence. That guy had presence on the screen. This movie in particular. Apollo Creed entering the bicentennial fight as George Washington crossing the Delaware and then taking off his like wig and everything, and then he's Uncle Sam, and he gets into the arena and he points at everyone in the crowd like, I want you, I want you, I want you. Like, it's such a good image, and only Carl Weathers could do that. Not even Stallone. Like, no matter what era of Stallone you're talking about, he could not have pulled that off, but Carl Weathers does it so easily. And the way he smiles in the fight, like, he just has that unbeatable presence. He's so good in this movie. That's what the 70s cinema was all about. Like, let's have a black man be the face of America in this movie. He is the intelligent, powerful, unbeatable patriot. And it's Carl Weathers. That's awesome. That is so cool. It's not Robert Redford. Get him out of here. Carl Weathers is here, and he is here to take names while smiling on TV. That's America in the 70s, and I love it. Also, this is one of the few happy endings out of all the Best Picture winners this decade. And Rocky didn't even win the fight. Like, it's a happy ending because he survived the fight. He got a chance no one else would have given him, and he took it, and he took it seriously. He raised himself by his bootstraps. Like, he achieves the American dream. Like, it's a rough movie. It's a very real look at kind of down on their luck people in not good parts of America. But he has the chance that no one else like him will ever get. And he actually achieves the greatness that he was looking for. He doesn't win the fight, but he wins his dream. And he gets to be with Adrian at the end. So, it's a happy ending. That is rare in this decade. We do not give Sylvester Stallone enough credit for actually achieving the American dream himself in the 1970s. Zero to hero like no one else in history. He was compared to Orson Welles and Charlie Chaplin in his like first ever big break movie. What the heck? That never happens. It still doesn't happen. That's crazy. So, props to Stallone for being the only one that actually won the American dream especially in the 70s. Before the steroids, before the 80s version of him, he was as genuine as they come. And that's why this movie is so amazing. No matter how many times you rewatch it, it's got the magic. Both from Carl Weathers and definitely from Stallone himself. Now we have to talk about movies I don't like. Let's speed through these. So Annie Hall won in 1977. I hate this movie because I hate Woody Allen. This movie is about Woody Allen, by Woody Allen, with Woody Allen. I don't even hate him because of what he did. Like, he's a terrible person, and I hate him for that, for what he's done. But I hate this movie because of just who he is. This whole movie is just him telling us how suffocating he is as a person. Like, his personality, not even by what he does. Like, his personality is just suffocating. And then he looks at the camera and he's like, why does everyone seem to hate me? It's because you're you, man. Like, don't make a movie about it. Make a movie about it because, I don't know, if you're an artist, you're going to create art. But, like, why did people enjoy this? I hate this movie. There wasn't a single minute I enjoyed. I don't know why people in the 70s liked it. I don't care that he broke all the rules. Like, everyone else is breaking the rules. But for some reason, the way Woody Allen broke the rules, everyone's like, oh, Woody Allen's the next great guy. No, he's a terrible person. I hate him. This movie sucks. I don't know why Diane Keaton defends him. I don't know if she still does to this day, but she did when he was accused, and I don't get it. So 1978 is definitely an improvement, but I still think it's a rough movie. The Deer Hunter. So this film was the first big production to actually show the horrors of Vietnam War. To American audiences, at least. It deserves the credit of that and the credit that it definitely influenced every other Vietnam movie that wasn't in production at the time. I'm assuming Apocalypse Now was in production when this movie was being made because it took forever for that movie to be made. But all the other movies about Vietnam definitely inspired by this one. But now that there are other Vietnam War movies that are definitely better than this one, it's rough. It's a rough final product in a recent viewing, like a current day viewing. It's split into 3 parts, 3-hour-long chunks, and I think it'd be better if you just cut the first hour out of the movie entirely. Not because it's boring, but because it's the 3 guys in like their last night in their hometown. And sure, it's really sweet. There's some really good moments in there. But then we go to Vietnam and they survive it, and then De Niro's character comes home, and all of his buddies are kind of saying hi, and he's trying to get back into his normal life, and he can't. It would be so much better for us as the audience. This is more of a modern editing idea, but it would be so much better for us as the audience if we never met the friends until he came home from Vietnam. Like, what if we started in Vietnam with him, watched him struggle to save his friends, to survive, and he does succeed to an extent. And then he comes home and all these like strangers are there congratulating him and they don't even know what he's been through. That would have such a bigger impact, for me at least, if his friends were as strange to us as they now are to him when he comes home. Like, he can't understand them anymore. He's never left Vietnam, so why are we starting in a place that he's never going to understand by the end of the movie? It's just, I can't connect with him when he can't connect with the other people. I feel like it should be the opposite. I would argue the wedding might have even more sticking power if it was the final scene, because the final scene is really boring and really bad, and there's like a freeze frame that is rough. It's an awkward freeze frame. I would say save the wedding for the end so we see a snippet of what his old life is, and then when the wedding photographer takes a picture of all the people, have that be the final shot. You see the before after witnessing the consequences of the war. That would be a much bigger impact, especially for that last scene. But that's more of a modern editing style. So I can't really say, oh, they should have just done this, because it was the 70s. Like, the way they do things is very different. Going back to The Godfather 2, we would not edit a movie like that anymore. Like that. We would do 2 movies. We would do a franchise instead of just one movie. So it's kind of hard to critique it on that. And finally, we have Kramer versus Kramer in 1979. This movie's okay. I don't know. I haven't seen Noah Baumbach's Marriage Story, so I can't really compare it with this movie like everyone else does. Everyone else is like, oh, Kramer versus Kramer is just a marriage story, but in the 70s. I don't think it is, because this film is surprisingly one-sided with the husband. It's kind of analyzing the gender roles of the 70s and how single fathers raising children and trying to keep their jobs in like those... in this movie in particular, it's like a very bachelor party, like get drinks at the bar, like who cares, your wife is at home taking care of your kids, they don't need you, stay for drinks. But then he's like, no, I'm the dad, I have to take care of the kid, I have to leave, and how that kind of affects his life on both ends. So it's an interesting idea. The way they treat the mom in this movie, I can't tell if she's supposed to be a villain or if we're supposed to understand her. There's some reviews that are like, oh, you understand both sides. That's just because it's Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep gives a really good performance in this movie. So I do think she deserves that Oscar that she won, but I don't know, she gives like this big speech in the courtroom, in the Kramer versus Kramer courtroom, and I don't know if you're supposed to believe the words she is saying. I believe that character would say those words in that speech, but I don't believe that character believes those words. Like, it feels like a performance. It doesn't feel like Meryl Streep is performing. It feels like the character Meryl Streep is creating is giving a performance to win. So I can't tell if she is supposed to be this villain or not. And this movie's very one-sided, so I would assume yes. But then the ending is just kind of like, no, she's actually a good person. That I don't really know if I like either results of that. Like, if she's just super villainized and she's a bad person, I would feel gross about that. But, oh, she actually is a good person, that just feels like a cop-out. So I don't really like Meryl Streep's character in this movie. She gives a great performance. Apparently Dustin Hoffman like kind of emotionally abused her while they were filming so she would give a better performance. Some of the actors in this decade are not good people, like their characters. Dustin Hoffman, Woody Allen, I'm assuming the others, but those are the big ones. Rough stuff in this. So she gives a great performance, but like, is it worth it? Do the ends justify the means kind of thing? I don't know. It just makes me feel icky. It's an okay movie. I'm sure Marriage Story is maybe better because I'm assuming it's more neutral on both the mother and the father, and that they're both in the wrong. I hope you had a good time watching this, as much as I had making it. So please keep watching. Follow along with the Best Picture wins. Watch one a week. It's pretty doable. I do it every Monday night. It's fun. But yeah, those are the 1970 Best Picture winners. I had really fun watching those movies. I can't wait to see what happens in the 80s. I'm just gonna have my list. I'm just gonna have my list right here of the rankings of the 10 movies, so I don't have to like explain it again. It's right there. I'm just gonna keep talking so you could read it. Put me on mute. List. And it was fun making these drinks. It was fun doing this video. Every decade we'll get a video. Thanks for watching. Hopefully the Oscars were fun this year. I recorded it before, the night before it happened. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Cheers, and I'll see you in the 80s.